Imagine a network so vast, so intricate, that it connected continents centuries before the age of exploration. Imagine merchants traveling thousands of kilometers, not for conquest, but for commerce. This is the story of the Silk Road, not merely a route, but the circulatory system of the ancient world. The Silk Road was never a single path. It was a living, breathing network of trade routes that stretched over 6,000 kilometers, connecting China to the Mediterranean, from approximately the 2nd century BCE until the 15th century CE. But here's what most people get wrong. It wasn't primarily about silk. The name itself is a Western invention, a romanticization created centuries later by European scholars. The reality was far more complex and infinitely more valuable. During the Han Dynasty in China, around 130 BCE, the need for trade became urgent. China possessed something the Western world desperately desired. Silk, yes, but also spices, jade, porcelain, and tea. In return, the West offered glass, wool, precious metals, and ideas. But between these two great civilizations lay thousands of kilometers of treacherous terrain, scorching deserts, towering mountains, and hostile territories. No single merchant could traverse this distance alone. What emerged instead was a relay system of intermediaries, primarily from Central Asia, particularly the great cities of Samarkand and Bukhara. These Central Asian merchants became the true architects of global commerce. They weren't just traders. They were cultural ambassadors, information brokers, and the invisible engineers of an early form of globalization. They understood that profit lay not in direct trade between China and Rome, but in the value added at each step of the journey. A bolt of Chinese silk that left Chang'an, modern-day Xi'an, for perhaps 20 bolts of gold might change hands a dozen times before reaching Constantinople, each transaction increasing its perceived value. The financial mechanisms of the Silk Road were revolutionary for their time. Merchants developed early forms of credit instruments and letters of exchange to mitigate the risks of carrying precious cargo across unstable territories. The absence of a unified currency meant that barter remained primary, but sophisticated trading posts evolved where rates of exchange were carefully negotiated and recorded. These weren't just commercial hubs. They were financial centers where merchants could convert goods to currency, store wealth securely, and access credit for future ventures. But the Silk Road carried more than merchandise. It was a conduit for knowledge, religion, and technology. Buddhism traveled eastward along these routes, fundamentally transforming Chinese, Korean, and Japanese civilizations. Islamic knowledge and mathematics flowed westward, enriching the emerging European Renaissance. Technological innovations, from papermaking to gunpowder, from advanced metallurgy to astronomical instruments, moved along these same pathways, reshaping societies thousands of kilometers away. The great cities that emerged along these routes became cosmopolitan centers unprecedented in human history. Samarkand, in particular, became a melting pot where Chinese merchants lived alongside Persians, Indians, Arabs, and Greeks. These weren't just trading posts. They were cities where multiple religions coexisted, where languages blended, and where merchants conducted business in a dozen tongues. Archaeological evidence shows that these cities had sophisticated infrastructure: warehouses, caravanserais, fortified rest stations for travelers, mint facilities for standardizing coinage, and even early forms of insurance arrangements for merchants. Yet the Silk Road was never a safe or predictable venture. It was fraught with dangers both natural and human-made. The Taklamakan Desert, whose name in Uyghur means "go in and you won't come out," claimed countless lives. Bandits prowled mountain passes, and political instability could shut down entire routes overnight. The Venetian merchant Marco Polo's famous journey in the 13th century showcased both the possibility and the peril of these routes. His travels took over 3 years, crossing deserts, mountains, and hostile regions, yet the intelligence and trade goods he brought back made the journey economically justified. The wealth generated by the Silk Road was staggering. Consider this. The merchants of Central Asia accumulated fortunes comparable to the wealthiest nobility of Europe and China. Some trading families controlled vast networks spanning entire continents. The financial inequality that emerged was equally dramatic. A successful merchant trader could accumulate wealth in a single expedition that would take a farmer generations to earn, yet the risks were equally proportional. Many traders lost everything to bandits, weather, or market fluctuations. The Silk Road also functioned as an early insurance network. Merchant guilds developed systems where traders would pool resources to protect against total loss. If one caravan was attacked, the collective shared the burden. This early form of risk management was crucial to the system's sustainability. Insurance records from medieval trading posts show sophisticated calculations of risk, remarkably similar to modern actuarial science. But perhaps the most hidden face of the Silk Road was its role in shaping global power dynamics. The wealth generated along these routes financed the rise and fall of empires. The Tang dynasty's prosperity was directly linked to control of Silk Road trade. When the Mongol Empire rose to dominance in the 13th century, they didn't destroy the Silk Road, they secured it. Under Mongol rule, the routes became safer and more organized than ever before. Ironically, this peak of Silk Road commerce occurred during the era when military might seemed most important. The Mongols understood something crucial. Controlling trade routes was more profitable than controlling territory. The decline of the Silk Road came not from a single catastrophic event, but from a series of transformations. The fall of the Mongol Empire fragmented the unified security that had protected the routes. More significantly, the rise of maritime trade in the 15th century offered an alternative. When Portuguese and Spanish explorers began circumnavigating Africa and crossing the Atlantic, they created new trade routes that bypassed the Central Asian middlemen entirely. The Silk Road didn't disappear overnight. It gradually faded as newer, faster alternatives emerged. Yet the legacy of the Silk Road extends far beyond its decline. It established patterns of international commerce that persist today. The concept of specialized trade hubs, the development of financial instruments for long-distance trade, the cultural exchange that accompanies commerce, these were all pioneered along the Silk Road. Modern global supply chains, digital marketplaces, and international finance are, in many ways, direct descendants of the systems developed by Silk Road merchants. The true genius of the Silk Road wasn't technological. The routes themselves were traversed by people and animals, using technologies that were ancient even in their time. The genius was organizational, financial, and cultural. It proved that humans could create systems of exchange that transcended borders, that profit could be made not through conquest but through mutual benefit, and that commerce could be a more powerful force for cultural integration than armies. Today, as nations invest billions in infrastructure projects designed to revive these ancient routes, from China's Belt and Road Initiative to renewed interest in Central Asian trade partnerships, we are witnessing a return to a principle that dominated human commerce for over a millennium. The Silk Road never truly disappeared. It transformed, adapted, and evolved. Its hidden face was never about the goods themselves, but about humanity's fundamental drive to connect, to exchange, and to build prosperity through networks that bind us together across the greatest distances.